Welcome to Electric Evolution with Liz Allan. This podcast is about the journey to a more sustainable future in order for us to be able to do our bit to achieve net zero. I'll be discussing a variety of topics with experts in their field in order to educate and increase our knowledge of clean energy, electric vehicles and the electric vehicle infrastructure. So whether you're an individual wanting to make a difference at home, a small business or a corporate, this podcast is just for you. On the podcast today, I have got Paul Jewell, and he is the System Development Manager at National Grid Electricity Distribution. This is the second long name of something that I've had today, so I feel like I need to put my mother's teeth in. Paul, it's brilliant to meet you. Thank you ever so much for joining me on the podcast today.
That's okay, yeah, it's good to be here. It's good to talk about the future of electricity.
Absolutely. Now, I'm going to start off by saying you've just told me that you've been involved in this kind of sector since 1988.
Yeah, that's crazy, isn't it? So when I joined the industry, it was still nationalised. So I've seen it through privatisation. Yeah. I've seen what were electricity boards split up so that supply companies that you buy your energy from split out from the companies like ours that run the network. And what I've seen, which is really great for the future, is net zero now means that the government have set a target for zero emissions by 2050 and a route plan that achieves it by decarbonising heating and transport and using electricity as the decarbonised future. So, 30 years later, we're in a position where electricity is about to take another big leap and do another great thing for the UK.
So I was going to say as well, Paul, that the other news, there is big news in the Jewell family, isn't there? In 4 weeks' time, you are going to be retiring.
Yeah, mad, isn't it? So it's great to have the opportunity because if there's one thing that the last 10 years of this job have done is it's sort of kept me away from our family more than I'd want. So it's great to get back home. But part of me would love to be a fresh young graduate coming into the industry now and spending 30 years hitting that target of net zero. Yes. Because when you look at the amount of investment in the network, the change in the network, the change in the way people are going to rely on electricity, I just want to do it again. But no, you only get one lifetime and you shouldn't spend too much working at it. You should spend as much time as you can enjoying yourself at the end.
Oh, because otherwise, what is the point, isn't it? And because, and the biggest thing is, you live near the seaside as well, which I'm not jealous about at all.
So
I was going to say, so 4 weeks time, you'll be off. And in the meantime, let's glean as much information from you as I possibly can. Is that all right?
Yeah, that's fine.
So tell me a bit about your job. What does the role of System Development Manager? What does that mean? What do you do?
Yeah, it's a bit of an odd job title, isn't it? It's almost like one of those games of make up a strategic job title that doesn't mean anything. What it's turned into, it's been lots of different things. There's been lots of technical elements to it. There have been lots of future thinking elements to it. Part of the connections team reported to me. The innovation team has reported to me at different times. So we've always been involved in looking at the future. And what the most key part of the job in the past 18 months, 2 years, has been leaving that to others because we're setting up big connection teams for the amount of new inquiries we're going to have, which is a whole other question we can talk about in a minute, and letting me focus on trying to engage with government and trying to make sure that we can hit the net zero goals that we're looking for, but also starting to engage with organisations that wouldn't have thought about electricity up until now and will be at the forefront, either with heating or transport, at the forefront of using a lot more electricity.
Yes.
And as in any industry, you don't have to go far away from your industry to realise that knowledge disappears quite quickly. And what I'd hate is for, in the future, organisations to be stuck because they assumed that they could just flick the switch and charge 1,000 EVs or heat a shopping centre, and not have engaged and worked out that there's work that we need to do. So there's a lot of long-term thinking, and I think lots of people look from now forwards, and especially if you're in business, you'll have short-term targets and short business plans. What I tend to do is start at 2050 and look backwards to where we are now to try and work out what needs to be done. And you end up in really interesting discussions with businesses and with the government, to that sense of what do we do now to get us to a position where we are ready. And so, having been in the industry a long time, what I wouldn't like is somebody in the future to go, why didn't we think about that? What I'd want is for the sort of backbone investment in our infrastructure, which will be key, is for people to go, that was good decisions they made 10 years ago, 15 years ago. That put us in a good place for the future. So the job's all about that future gazing, which is really good fun.
Yeah. I was going to say, I mean, at the moment, you must be involved. I mean, I've read some of the projects that you're actually involved in. And obviously, the other thing I was going to say, obviously, you know that I've interviewed Graham Cooper a few months ago. I have to say, this is me, totally honest. I really didn't know very much about National Grid until I spoke to Graham. You know, and I think a lot of us, we know the name, you know, oh yes, of course I've heard of National Grid, but you don't actually know what you do. You know, most people don't really, unless they're kind of in the sector, don't really know what. So what does that mean? What do you do? What, just give me, you know. So learning from you today, and learning from Graham, it's actually adding to that picture for me. It's to me, everything that I'm learning at the moment, it's about kind of like a great big kind of puzzle, and I've got all the puzzle pieces and I'm putting them in place now and kind of going, oh, that bit goes there and that bit goes there. So it's brilliant.
Yeah, the electricity industry is one of those sort of quiet organisations that sits in the background, and a lot of our customers, I mean, we've got 8 million customers in the Southwest, South Wales and Midlands areas that we run, but I doubt if we speak to more than 1 million of those a year, because if your lights haven't gone out because there's a problem with the electricity supply, or if you haven't requested a new supply from us, why would you talk to us?
Yes.
And we're not the people you pay your bill to,
No,
but we're there, sat there
yeah.
in the background, being totally crucial to everything that you need. And keeping ahead of that and getting to a position where everybody can use the electricity that they want is important, because we can't be the problem in the future. I'd hate for in 10, 15, 20 years' time, the country as a whole to say, yeah, well, we tried to decarbonise, but the electricity industry weren't ready. And people couldn't have the equipment they had. The one thing that we've done, and there's lots of project research that goes behind it, but one of the things that we did a couple of years ago was got to a position where we are comfortable enough with domestic electric vehicle chargers that if you want one to be connected to your supply, when you say to us, I want to connect a charger, we just say, yeah, that's fine.
Yes.
And there's a lot of work behind that, and for some customers we will have to go and upgrade their service coming in off the street, or do changes to the arrangements. But we knew that we didn't want to be another hurdle for them in the change to getting an electric vehicle, and we didn't want people to have to wait. It's almost a bit like you'd have your new car and it'd be like having a toy at Christmas with no batteries. You'd be going, oh, what do I do now? So if we get out of that critical path, people can transition to electric vehicles. We're not a problem. We can come along later and tidy things up. That's not a problem at all. And when you look at the number of electric vehicles that will be hitting the roads from 2030 onwards, when every new car has to be electric or hybrid.
Yes.
Add that to the number of heat pumps that we're predicting by that time, and it's about 2,000 things a day hitting our network. And that feels like the sort of volumes where you need your transaction to be, yeah, that's great, move on. If you had to do technical modeling on each one of them, our system would grind to a halt and nobody would get anything connected.
And when you say 2,000, so that is for just for your area, isn't it? Which is Midlands, South West, and South Wales. Is that
Yeah,
right? So
yeah.
it's not
If
the
you
whole of the
take
country, is it? Yours is
no,
just yours is a portion of it, isn't it?
yeah. So if you take 2030, which is when all cars are either hybrid or electric, there's more than 1 million registrations a year, and the government predictions are for 600,000 heat pumps a year
Yeah.
for the transition to low carbon home heating. So 1.6 million things a year will be additional connections to the electricity grid in the UK. And when you roll that down to the 4 license areas we have, you end up with something, it's a little bit lower, but something just short of 2,000 inquiries a day, which we've always run a very bespoke system, giving advice to customers, one-on-one inquiries get transactionally processed. And suddenly we're into a volume sales model, which has never existed in our industry, because
Yeah.
we've
Yeah.
never had all our customers knocking on the door saying, I want to do something different, please.
Yeah. Going me,
And
me, me. I. Me. I want
yeah,
me next.
yeah,
Well, funnily enough, Paul, we're speaking today, and it's Monday in April, and we've just had we're having solar panels installed on Wednesday. So we've just had 10 solar panels delivered. We've just had a battery storage delivered, which is in the hall, which is sat next to me at the moment. Well, in the next room next to me at the moment. And we've just got a Zappy car charger as well. So
yeah,
all waiting, all very exciting, I've got to say. even if trying to get a big Arctic lorry down our close is not a very good idea, but he managed to
yeah,
do it, both of them, because they came separately. So yes, it's all kind of, so we're going to be the one of the families that you're saying about, it being easy to kind of actually
yeah,
connect something like a car charger to the network.
yeah. And I think also with what you're doing with solar panels and with battery storage is you're also going to start using energy that you've created for yourself. And yeah, people
Yes.
say that the greenest energy is energy you didn't use in the first place. But after that, the greenest energy is energy that got made where it was going to be used.
Yeah.
And I expect to see in the future a lot more customers, whether they're big customers or domestic customers, making energy, storing it, and using it in their new electric things, be they heating or transport. And it takes me around to a sort of stat that the Committee on Climate Change use, which is that by 2050 there'll be 4 times the amount of generation on our network. The network will be working 4 times as hard, but it will only be twice as big. And you start thinking, well, that doesn't make sense at all. But it does make sense if some of the heavy lifting is done by generation that's at the customer's end of the network rather than at the feeding end of the network.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got to say, I'm looking forward to just watching this work. It's funny. It's only 12 months since we got kind of like a little smart, what you call it? Oh God, for your, oh, I'm having a senior moment now. Honestly,
Well, a
Paul.
hive.
No. Where you can monitor your electricity and how much you're using.
Oh, the smart meter with
Thank
the
you. That's it.
in-home
Yeah.
display.
So
Yeah,
I'm told you I'm having a senior moment. Anyway,
yeah,
and actually, it's been really interesting just watching that. You know, so God knows what we're going to be like when we're able to see where all the energy is going across the house. Because when a kettle's on, or when we've got the washing machine on, or something like that, we're kind of running around going, "What? How much? 47p? How is that
yeah,
possible?" So, so goodness know what. Yeah, like I say, well, how it's going to move forward. But it is going to be really really interesting. I'm gonna
yeah,
enjoy doing this. I love innovation. I love new things. I'm just a bit of a geek like that.
mm, yeah.
So
It's good fun.
tell me about these projects. So one specific project. So right. So you lead the national grid in preparing for predicted 1.5 million EVs. We've been talking about that, but the other thing we were talking about previously was about the project that you were working with at the Moto service station in Exeter.
Yeah,
Can you just kind of explain a little bit about that, if you wouldn't mind? Because
yeah.
that's really
So
interesting.
yeah, electric vehicles are quite interesting because the early adopters of electric vehicles tended to be people that could charge at home. Um,
Yeah.
it, 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 it's a function of the fact that if you wanted to buy an electric vehicle 10 years ago, you were buying a brand new one.
Mm,
And people that can afford to buy brand new electric vehicles tended to have driveways or garages. We did a very early project, and it was all about home charging and the effects of
mm,
home charging on the network. And that led to us getting to the position of saying, yeah, if you want an EV charger, you can tell us and we'll say yes for you to connect it. So, but all that happened, and it doesn't help the 40% of drivers in the UK that haven't got access to off-street parking.
mm,
The
mm.
people that will have to charge somewhere else. And
Yes.
the question is, where's that somewhere else going to be?
Yeah, yeah.
We developed a substation which could fit in a car park and would charge 20 or 30 chargers
Right.
if required,
Mm-hmm.
or 8 or 10 very fast ones. But we looked at where you needed to do something completely different. And where I thought we needed to do something completely different first was motorway services,
Mm-hmm.
because they might have a demand of 1 megawatt. Don't worry about the units here. 1 megawatt of energy is like a small housing estate, or a motorway
Yes.
services, restaurant, petrol station, and whatever. And if you look at the number of EV chargers that you might expect at a motorway service, you start getting into tens of megawatts.
Mm,
Now, for us, tens of megawatts is the demand of a small town. And suddenly you're into a world where you need to create the sort of substation infrastructure that feeds a small town. So if you imagine, if you ever see when you're driving around substations at the edge of towns that have got
yeah.
fences, lots of outdoor equipment,
Got one near us.
really
Yeah.
big, sort of
Yeah.
40 meter by 40 meter installations, and we need to recreate those at a motorway service.
Mm,
Now,
mm,
I think those substations look quite nice, but I'm an electrical engineer and I've been here a long time. If you take one of those substations to a motorway service and say, we want to put this at your motorway service, most of the operators are going to go, well, firstly, it looks ugly, and secondly, I haven't got the space for it.
yeah. Yeah.
So the project that we did, which was called Take Charge, which was about how do you make that a product which is acceptable to motorway services, and how do you turn it into a product that can be a sort of cookie cutter style standard design that you use over and over again. So we knew we had to go up a voltage if we were going to do motorway services. So we squashed one of those big substations into 2 shipping containers,
Oh my
in
God.
essence.
Okay.
So it was, yeah, the initial discussions with the manufacturers were, I'm not sure we can do this. It was, oh, go on, have a go. We want to do this. So, and it needs to be that to fit at a motorway service.
Mm,
They haven't got spare land because they're a big car park.
mm,
And so we created a solution which it's built off-site. A lot of the work is done in the containers. So it's built in a shipping container and a transformer, which is sort of a shipping container, brought to site, connected together. Now, it's shown that we can do that differently. The one that we did in conjunction with Moto is down at Exeter Services at the bottom of the M5,
mm,
and it's got 12 megawatts of capacity. Again, it doesn't really matter what megawatts are. That would look like 70 or 80 electric car chargers. And if you're an EV driver at the moment and you go around motorway services and you sort of think, oh, if there's 2, that's okay. If there's 4 or 6, that's better. If there's 8, well, isn't this a good day? We're in a position where we've created the capacity at Exeter that we can essentially walk away from it and say, you're sorted, you're ready. Because I think by the time Moto have fitted 80 EV chargers at their car park, there won't be much car park left. And
mm.
already down at Exeter, there is 15 GridServe chargers, another 10 or 12 Tesla chargers, and more to come. And
Wow.
it's a totally different charging environment if you're a driver, because once you get into the sort of 20 or 30 chargers and you're having dwell times and charge times of 20 or 30 minutes, you're in a world where a charger is essentially, on average, becoming available one every minute. So you're getting to a stage where you think, yeah, if I turn up there, there's enough chargers that there will be one for me.
Yeah.
Or if there isn't, I won't have to wait very long. And it's totally different to the sort of horror stories of the hour-long queues and the early queues at motorway services that we've had. But to do that, there's a few things you need to do. Firstly, you need to have a solution that you can replicate at other locations. So take charge has done that. The other thing that you need to do is you need to be ready to go in our configuration 1 voltage higher for the way that you feed supplies into a motorway service. And you need to get motorway services ready and in the mood for, this is what you need for 2050. Start thinking about it now, because we only want to build the network once, rather than ask for a megawatt now, another megawatt in a few years' time, another megawatt a few years after, and us build a more piecemeal and straggly network. We want to build the right network for the future. If we know what people are doing, we've got a solution, we can earmark capacity and just build big and ready, which I think is almost the sort of strap line for net zero in the world of electricity. Is if the network is going to be working harder and it's going to be doing more, we need to build it big and we need to build it ready. The flexibility will mean we don't need to build it too big, but there's still a lot of physical work that needs to be done and a lot of long-term planning, because the electricity industry runs assets that tend to have a 50-year life. So anything that's being built today by our teams out in the field will be still there and working after we've achieved net zero. So if it's not big enough, that people are going to come back around and go, hold on, were you not thinking about net zero when you put that cable in the ground or you built that overhead line?
And they need to be thinking of that, don't they? Really, and they will.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they are. So replication then of Exeter to other
Yeah.
service stations. How long did it take you to actually install? Obviously, you're talking about a lot of it was done off site, the manufacturers. But how long did it take you to kind of, because now you know, don't you? Now you know how long the manufacture of this kind of new substation, get my teeth in, will take. But how long how long does it take for installation, and how much effort is needed to put that into, kind of service station like Watford Gap or kind of Heston or somewhere like that? How does it work? Replication, standardisation, or something?
The project took a couple of years, but projects like that do, because they're innovative and they're different, and you've got to do that research. One of the years was 2020, so we all stayed home for a little while when we should have been doing the project as well. So, but we've created a product which is essentially a standard that can go anywhere, and we've done that to be ready for the government's investment in Project Rapid. So that there's a £950 million fund that Department for Transport and the Office for Zero Emission Vehicles have set up to provide charging infrastructure for the motorway and trunk road network. So that they're going to be building ready for the future. They've given us indications of supply capacity that are working, and we are building out to that. And what this does is gives us a product which, I say, because it's a cookie cutter type product, you can just keep ordering them. So we can say to transformer and switchgear manufacturers, that product that we had as the innovation product down at Exeter, we now want 10, 20, 30 or 40 of them. So, start your production line of adding that into the sort of things that you build. It then becomes a product that you can put on a shelf. As for delivery timescales, one of the things that will change motorway service to motorway service is the distance to our local network and how far we need to get electricity from to get it to the front door, if you like, of the motorway service. So that will be a cable dig. It will be at that higher voltage level, that 33,000 volt level. And it might be a short dig, it might be a long dig. I've seen some that are 20 kilometres of dig to get there. So that takes a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah.
But we don't need that on day one. You can start digging now to get ready. And when you're in a position that you've got enough EV chargers that you need that substation, that take charge type substation, it's some civils to create, some plinths for it to sit on, and it's turn up with a couple of shipping containers on the back of low loaders and crane them into place. Now, my engineering colleagues will be horrified that I've turned their project into a couple of sentences like that. But that's sort of all it is. It's a very standard build and a very repeatable build, and that's something that we've also never done. In the world of building substations that feed a whole town, we never make them as a standard. We make them as bespoke units because they fit the town that they feed. So this whole level of standardisation is a change for us.
I was going to say, I mean, it just sounded like a very unique time for you. I mean, it's not going to be unique after a few years, is it? Do you know what I mean? Because there'll probably be somebody who'll come up with there'll be other things that'll come up over the years that you end up probably replicating and or kind of larger or smaller or whatever's required, won't you, over time? But it's really interesting.
I don't know if it's unique at the moment. I think there's a huge acceleration in the use of electricity. So one of the early projects that we did that looked at electric vehicles and home charging was called Electric Nation. It was back in 2015, so that's only 8 years ago. When it was pitched as an innovation project, one of my big concerns was that the plan was to get 700 EV drivers, monitor how they use their chargers and see how the network would be affected. And in 2015, my biggest concern was, where are we going to get 700 EV drivers from? And because at that time, you were either driving a Tesla Model S or a Nissan Leaf or a Vauxhall Ampera. There wasn't a lot else around. And when we were trying to sign customers up to our project, we had use of a Tesla. And when we took it places, people would come to see the Tesla. And that seems quite laughable now, but it's only 8 years ago.
I get you. I do. I
And
can imagine.
and so if you sort of fast forward another 8 years, you think, where are we going to be? And one of the places I think we're going to be is that take charge substation in a box will be at the next big places for decarbonisation, which I think are going to be airports or seaports.
Yes, because this is what I was going to say, didn't I? Yeah. You were. I listened to you on a podcast about the maritime industry and kind of decarbonisation of ports and the shipping industry. So like you're saying, can you just kind of bolt on to make it bigger and bigger?
Yeah, there's some call for evidences that have been out from Department for Transport recently. There was one on maritime, which was about having ships that are tied up alongside not using diesel generators, but being connected to shore power. There's also been one for aviation, which looks at getting to a position where all the ground operations at an airport will be zero emissions, and that's quite a challenging one, because it's not even net zero; it's fully zero emissions. So, but you sort of take this lump that we've created, the take charge lump, the 12 or 20 megawatts in a box, and you think that's going to be needed at airports, it's going to be needed at seaports, and very much in the scale of taking the amount of electricity for a small town to a motorway service seemed a little bit bonkers a few years ago. If you're a seaport that is a seaport that's used by cruise ships, most cruise ships sort of are the same size as a small town.
They are, exactly.
So you wouldn't need one of those boxes and set of equipment per port. You'd need it per berthing point and per ship.
Okay.
And the same in aviation. At an airport, the supply capacity to an airport is a bit like a small town. But once you decarbonise all of the ground operation kit and the heating and the air conditioning in the airport building, you're in a position where it's now 2 or 3 times the size of a small town. So suddenly it needs electricity quickly, and this sort of new packaged electricity, if you like, I think is the way forward.
Yeah.
And I think if I came back and in 10 years' time and looked, it's like, oh wow, we're using it for that now, are we? And we're using them in banks of 10 or whatever crazy thing has happened.
That's when you've been swimming in the sea for however many 10 years and doing a bit of
Yeah,
fishing and all that kind of stuff. You know, when you come back and go, oh, that's what you're doing with what we thought of then.
yeah, yeah. But you need to build those little blocks to create everything that you need. And I'd say just going a step bigger was a really useful thing for us to break that standard design assumption that
So,
customers take electricity at a certain voltage, and we
yeah,
don't build substations like that in shipping containers. And you
no,
break that apart and change the way you run the network.
that's the whole idea of this is just kind of quite mind blowing. I was talking to somebody, I was interviewing somebody last week who worked in the maritime industry, and what you were saying about, you know, kind of like having a cruise ship, I did not realize how much power. I don't know why, because you know the size of them, but you know, kind of actually having them in port, I didn't realize how much power was being, how much it would generate, how much power you'd need to generate to kind of sustain a cruise ship like that. It just, and to make that all net zero, make it all electric. It's fantastic, really,
Yeah.
isn't
So
it?
if you go back to those Committee on Climate Change predictions of 4 times the electricity usage, then what we're saying at the moment is electricity is about a quarter of what's used as an energy source in the UK. And by 2050, it will be the main energy source in the UK.
Yeah.
So we need to deliver 4 times over what we're delivering at the moment. And we'll do that with lots of smart, flexible solutions, but also a network that's twice as big on the predictions that committee is running.
Yeah.
And you then start having to create big networks in places you didn't expect them.
Where else would there be? So you've got the big, like you're saying seaports, airports. I suppose you have it in container? I suppose that's part of the port where you've kind of got
So you,
containers.
you're into decarbonisation of heating and transport essentially. So by the time you've done road transport, which I think motorway services do, and then you've done airports and seaports, you're sort of covered
Getting
there.
there.
We haven't
Yeah.
talked about rail network.
Of course we haven't.
But
No.
the rail network tend to take most of their electricity supplies from the national grid transmission network rather
Okay.
than from the local network operators' networks. And there are plenty of main lines that are being electrified.
Yes.
I'm a Southwest lad, and 10 years ago, if I was travelling from Bristol to London, it was on a diesel electric train. Now it's on an electric train, and
Exactly.
doing that journey, you watch all the gantries being built and the wires being putting up. There's a huge investment outside of our industry, which is making that ready. And
Yeah.
there's still further to go in that world of what do you do with branch lines? What do you do with the areas that you're not expecting to put those overhead wires and electrification in?
Yeah.
Which takes you into a whole world which I don't think anybody's got the answers yet for, because they're still all on the table as options of, is it electricity? Is it hydrogen? Is
What
it
is it?
is it a hydrogen style fuel? Is it ammonia? Is it methanol? Is it
Yeah.
battery storage? And all of that is growing. But I think that the thing for us when people sometimes say, oh, well, if it's going to be hydrogen, you're not interested, are you? Is, well, we are, because if you're going to be making green hydrogen, you make it with renewable electricity. So electricity and electrolysis means we're back in the room and we're interested in what's going on, almost regardless of what the end fuel vector is. because somewhere in the process electricity gets involved.
Yes. So I was going to say, we're talking about electrification of rail. So we're in Reading, and the Elizabeth line was opened last year.
Yeah,
Probably, I think it was a couple of years late, wasn't it? Obviously, because of COVID and pandemic and everything, and everything else. But actually, that was very interesting, looking at the way that they were kind of reinforcing a lot of the kind of the tunnels, and looking at the overhead cables and things like that.
yeah,
So, and that is a brilliant line to take all the way to East London, so to go over, for me to go over to the O2 or XL or somewhere like that now
yeah,
is so much easier. Just hop on one train and get through. So it does make a difference,
yeah. The
definitely.
first time I got on it, I got on at Canary Wharf and went back to Paddington, and it
Did
felt
you?
like it was time travel, because it was like, what? It's less than 20 minutes and I'm
Yeah,
here. How's that happened?
yeah. Rather than having to go all these circuitous routes, don't you? You have to go from there to
Yeah,
there to there to there to there, down the DLR and off from, and all
yeah,
this kind of stuff. So yeah. So I was going to ask you, if you are Midlands, South West, and South Wales, what we've been talking about with kind of the Exeter Services project, how does
yeah.
that kind of link into the rest of the UK's grid? So I mean, I don't know how well you guys, obviously, because we said before we started recording, that actually you kind of incorporated into National Grid kind of fairly, was it about 18 months ago, did you say?
Yeah.
So how do you play nicely? That's what I'm trying to ask.
No, that's okay. Yeah. So, so the Take Charge project got funded through innovation funding,
Hmm.
and the innovation funding that the industry uses comes from all electricity customers. So a small proportion of your bill becomes part of the innovation funding that we use. Because it's customer funded, in effect, that means that everything we learn we make public. So
Right.
you can go on our website and you can download the specification to go and build your own take charge substation if you want. And the other thing that Ofgem, our regulator, is very keen that we do is that we only do research once. So we do work with the other network operators in the UK, so the ones that run the areas that aren't South West, South Wales, and the two Midlands licence areas, to share everything that we do with them. So we, in fact, the first thing you have to do when you register an innovation project in our world is you have to share it with the other network operators to check that they haven't done anything similar,
Right.
because we don't want to waste customers' money doing the same research twice.
No,
But the
exactly.
other thing that's really useful in our industry is that whilst we're sort of in competition, because Ofgem keep league tables of us against each
God.
other, we're
Right.
not really in competition, because we only operate in the geographies that we operate in.
Mm.
And we do a lot of work together through our trade association, the Energy Networks Association. So one of the things that we're trying to do from our point of view with the Take Charge project is we've created a specification out of that project for a substation if you wanted to build one in the National Grid distribution network area. But I want to take it, and people in our technical team are taking it to the other network operators through the ENA, the Energy Networks Association, to make it a national specification, which also then makes it easier for Department for Transport and OZEV, who are trying to roll out charging in the UK,
Yes.
is that they
Yeah.
can say, yeah, we like this standard product. And that's not unusual. Most networks in the UK look like other people's networks in the UK. We all build the same stuff out of the same things generally. So having another standard solution on the table that can be used across the UK is sort of what we do, because it makes us efficient, and it cuts development costs.
It will make a massive difference, and like you say, so excuse my complete ignorance on this one. So you're talking about the fact that it fits into two shipping containers. If you were
Yeah,
looking at something that is smaller than a service station, for example, maybe it's kind of like a rather large council car park.
Yeah.
Can you actually put it into somewhere like that?
Yeah, we'll make
Or,
it smaller. So here's
yeah.
the thing. So when we went to make that sort of substation that feeds a town into a couple of shipping containers,
Mm.
it was because we'd worked up from low voltage to what we might need for council car parks.
Mm.
And council car parks, we think, might need a megawatt of demand capacity.
Mm-hmm.
And in our world, that sort of demand capacity is the substation that you might see at the end of the street on a housing
Yeah.
estate.
Yeah.
The one that's, you know, a fiberglass box 4 meters by 4 meters or
Yeah.
something. So we knew that we could create a solution for sort of local authority car parks using those. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's quite simple, really. Give us a couple of parking spaces worth of space, and we'll give you 1,000 kilowatts of supply capacity in rough terms. Now, whether you use that 1,000 kilowatt for 650 kilowatt chargers or for 20, 50 kilowatt chargers, if my math stands up, it doesn't really matter. We just provide that level of capacity. And so that, again, it's another standard solution. We built substations for housing estates every day of the week. So building those similar substations for town centre car parks isn't a problem. I say, and the only difference was when we were looking at motorway services, they were going to need more than that, or more than 2 or 3 of those. And so if you look at the take charge substation with a 20 megawatt capacity, that gives you the backbone infrastructure to put 20 of those local substations out.
Yes.
And which is also really useful in motorway services, because not all the chargers are going to be in the same place. There'll be some where the fuel station is, there'll be some where the car park and restaurant is, there might be some where the hotel is. You then might need some bigger ones where HGVs are parking. So it gives you that flexibility to just pick off odd megawatts of demand and put it where it's needed, knowing that you've got this hub that's local.
So, and what timescale? And because obviously, I know that you are probably going to get this. You're going to get, as you said, there's going to be lots and lots of conversation with lots and lots of businesses now, and local authorities and very, very different places. What kind of timescale are we looking at to get one of these, kind of double substations up and running, for example, or a single substation even? What timescale are we looking at?
I think at the moment we need to build some, because we're not yet into that sort of process of ordering them and having a supply chain. But when we
Yes.
are, they'll be relatively quick. And I think it's the cabling to the site will be the thing which is the longest part of the job. Because if you have got to dig 5 kilometres or 10 kilometres to a site, that's a lot of work. And if we're doing all that civil works and digging a big trench from A to B, the other thing that we want to do is put big cables in it ready for the future, so we don't have to go back and do that digging twice. So I think it's site by site, the civil works become the issue. And I think for any of our customers and any organisations that are increasing their demand, what I'd say is come and talk to us. There's 2 areas where we really need, if you like, your help. The first is that we forecast electricity demand out for the future to make sure we build a network that's big enough. All the network operators do that. National Grid's electricity system operator does that as well, to balance the whole of the UK for demand and generation. But we do it based on assumptions and things we know. We're now revising ours once a year, and what we love is for people to tell us where we're wrong, tell us where numbers are bigger or where numbers are smaller, tell us where they think things are going to come sooner or slower, so that we can refine those models. And also, if you are looking for connections out into the future, we will allow you to reserve some capacity. There's options if you're a particular sort of group of customers, where you can say, I need a few megawatts now, I need 10 megawatts in 10 years' time. And we'll start laying out the network ready for that. And so, you can talk to our local designers and planners through things called connection surgeries. They're free of charge. You just ask for them.
Okay.
And they're almost a first step into talking to us about what you need for electricity for the future. And a few months ago, somebody said to me, when should you start talking to your DNO? And it was actually answered by somebody else in the audience who said, I know the answer to that. And it's a couple of months before you asked yourself the question of when do I think I need to be talking to the DNO? And come to us early, because we really want to build a network that's ready. And we can only do that if we've got a good idea of what people's plans are.
I think that makes, I think it is all about forward thinking, isn't it now?
Yeah, it is.
Like you said, and actually making sure that businesses do start looking long term at these things. I mean, I think most of them are, but like you said, it would be slightly concerning if businesses left it to the last minute and then went, oh, we should have asked about that 7 years ago, shouldn't we?
Yeah. And one thing that Ofgem have done this year is they've changed the rules on connection charges. So it used to be if you came to us, we'd give you a cost for a new connection or an upgraded connection that included the works that we needed to do on your piece of network, and also a proportion of the upgrade to the backbone network. This year Ofgem have changed it so that the cost of upgrading the backbone network doesn't land, in a lot of cases, on the end customer.
Wow.
That's to allow us to invest in the network and build more strategically and tactically to make sure we build a network that's ready. We don't have to wait for a customer to say, yes, I want that, before we start doing some backbone reinforcement. But it does mean that whilst the costs have disappeared, the work hasn't. So that the earlier you tell us about your plans and your long-term plans, the earlier we can start building a network that will be ready for you when you need it.
Yeah, it sounds the right way to go, definitely. So, you said connection surgeries are the best thing for people to start looking into
Yeah, I think
if they're interested in
yeah,
forward thinking like this.
yeah. If you're interested in a new connection and you've got some ideas, then a connection surgery with one of our local teams is a good way to kick around the ideas, kick around the future, kick around what's possible and what's not, what would be deliverable quick, what would
Yes.
take a long time. And the other place was the future energy scenarios that we run, that they're available on our website. The other network operators do them as well. And you can go down to local authority or substation or local substation level and look at what we think is happening in your area for increases in heat pumps, electric vehicles, solar generation, etc., etc.
Interesting.
And if that doesn't chime right with what you think's happening, and it's really important for a local authority, if that doesn't chime right with what's in your local authority plan, then come and talk to us.
This pointing people in these directions, Paul, I think is really, really useful.
Yeah,
So, and although I know only got 4 weeks left, I recognise the importance of doing this. When this is actually out live, I'll make sure that all of those, if we,
yeah,
I'll search around and try and make sure that I find all the links to them for various places, and because I just think that this is just really, really important information that people need to have for sure. So I want to say thank you ever so much for all this really fantastic inspirational info, and also to say I'm really jealous that you're going to be putting your feet up from 4 weeks time, because you're not that much older
yeah.
than me.
No, yeah. Who knew? Who knew?
So
You,
yeah,
you, you,
everybody just you won't see him, but you will see plenty of other people in National Grid that can actually help. And do you know what? I've really, really enjoyed talking to you, Paul. It's been brilliant.
no, it's been good fun. If we're talking about the future, is good fun.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, like I say, in 10 years time, it won't be a podcast, it'll be some kind of holocast, won't it? Like a hologram. I'll be a hologram. Me and you'll be holograms in someone's living room. God, that's
Yeah.
scary. But listen, thank you ever so much for your time, and good luck with retirement. I'm sure it'll go absolutely amazingly.
Yeah, thank you, Liz. No, it's good to talk to you. Thanks.
Thank you. And listen, and to everybody else, I'm going to say, see you next time. Thanks for listening and watching. Bye. You've been watching Electric Evolution with Liz Allan. Don't forget to subscribe and click on the bell icon, and you'll receive all of our weekly videos. Thanks for watching. See you soon. Bye.